Jordan, meet Velma, meet Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
And I mentioned as well that Jordan was interested in the DEI community. Wasn't sure if you had a chance to send him some information quite yet.
I have not.
Okay,
I haven't.
perfect.
Totally
Now you have a name to the face of who you're sending.
I will.
Yep, I have full faith.
We are not.
You have it on tape now, so
There you go. You are held to it. So Jordan actually had this idea of interviewing you. So I don't know, Jordan, if you want to give just a little bit of kind of your history with Western states so far and kind of where this came from.
Yeah, sure thing. So I have been working here for a little over a month now, so still pretty new, but I'm loving it so far. And I was very thrilled with the fact that you guys have a position like the one that you're in, you know, someone who focuses solely on DEI. And a little bit of my own personal background. I did a lot of advocacy, especially back whenever I lived in Texas, for the Black community, as well as, you know, I would help out with my friends who are in the Latinx community and helping them with some of their stuff as well. So it's definitely a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And so just hearing that we, you know, had a chief officer position for it is fantastic. And kind of what I was hoping to accomplish with this, since it is Black History Month, I thought that it would be a really good opportunity for us to just kind of show that, you know, Western states is, you know, taking the necessary steps to making a more inclusive environment, as well as trying to, you know, drive more equity, equality in the workplace as well, and just really promoting diversity. So I thought that you would be the perfect person to talk to about this. And so this will go on YouTube, probably chop up a couple of clips and put it on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and things like that.
so I don't know if I'm the perfect person to talk to, but I certainly have opinions, and I'm happy to share them. So where
We
in
like your
Texas?
opinions.
Where in Texas are you from?
I'm originally from Dallas, but I'm living in Fort Collins now.
Okay.
Or Loveland, but drive to Fort Collins, sorry.
I grew up in Texas, East
Okay.
Texas,
Okay.
in
Where at?
a segregated small town, Center Texas, right on the Louisiana border.
Okay.
It's about 50 miles or so from Shreveport, Louisiana.
Mhm.
My father's family is from the Louisiana side of the river, and my mother's family is from the Texas side of the river.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I remember the Sabine River is the border there on the east of Texas. And I remember, you know, crawfishing and walking barefoot through the creeks down that way. But yeah, so Texas is my home. I still have a lot of family. Most of my extended family, including my siblings, are all in Texas still. But
Gotcha. Okay,
mhm.
excellent. Well, I'm glad that we have that connection. So that's exciting. That's really cool. You said it was where in Texas?
Center,
Central?
center. It's in Shelby County. It's not in the center of anything.
Okay. Okay. It's like
It
Central
might be in the
Texas.
center of Shelby County.
Okay,
Or the
gotcha.
center of the 5 mile radius that's the downtown. Who knows?
Gotcha. Okay. So is that over there? I assume that's further east than Tyler. Yeah, it has to be if it's
It's
on.
east of, yes, east of Dallas, east of Tyler. I mean, it's about 15 miles from the Louisiana border.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So if you
Cool.
were to get on 20 and go east,
Mhm.
and then it's a little bit south of that freeway
Gotcha.
as you drive into Louisiana.
Excellent. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're okay with it, I would like to just kind of dive right on into some of these questions and kind of getting your take on some of the stuff. But you know, you've given us a little bit of your background, but I was hoping you could dive a little bit further into how you got, you know, into the DEI world and what that looked like for you and kind of how your career started up and all of that.
Yeah. I tell people, because you know, after, you know, when you've been in this work as long as I have, you tell the story enough times. But I tell people I think I've probably been doing this work since I was about maybe 7 years old, and
Mhm.
really started to recognize that there were differences between how we were treated in the Black community and
Mhm.
how, you know, folks in the white community were treated. So I started to see it really as a really young kid, And I may have even been younger than I think I remember being about 5 years old when my best little friend from across the road, we didn't have streets. Everybody had a road you had to cross, was a little white girl. Her name was Susie. And Susie and I would play together. We would either play in my yard or we'd play in her yard, but our parents never socialized together.
Mhm.
It just wasn't a thing that was done. But our mothers, who were both stay-at-home moms, would, either walk me down to the road and watch me go across, or her mom would come out and watch her walk across into my yard where we would play. And then when school started, so we were either, back then it was Head Start, because everybody back then went to, because we were all poor as church mice. Head Start or kindergarten is probably what most people would call it. The
Mhm.
buses came to take us to public schools,
Mhm.
and her bus came, and I wasn't able to get on her bus. And then my bus came, and I realized then that there was some separateness. And I didn't even know the word segregation, but I could feel
Mhm.
the separateness even at that young age. And it probably was the first weeks after that where I was called like names,
Mhm.
and not good names. So it
Right.
started really young, me recognizing there was a difference. So I tell people I've probably been doing this work since about that time. And when I was about 15, 16 or so was my first stint as a community organizer. So I helped deliver some services to the Black community where I live that before that time had never been delivered to us, but
Mhm.
delivered in the white communities in town. So yeah, it's been in my blood for as long as I can remember. But I've been doing this work now for about 30 years. So
Okay.
affirmative action, diversity and inclusion work, human rights, civil rights work, and you get to a place after you've done the work for this long, you think about what the next step is. And I was at that place in my career, coming from the city of Minneapolis as their civil rights director, which was my position just prior to coming to API Group.
Mhm.
And Russ Becker and I have a colleague, a mutual acquaintance, and we were introduced through that person. And Russ and I started talking, and then he was mentioning how he wanted to think about bringing API Group on their diversity and inclusion journey, especially with everything that was going on back in
Mhm.
2019, 2020.
Mhm.
And Russ and I started talking, and a few months later, here I am. So I've been here 15 months now. I started here in November of 2020, and it's been really a lot of fun for me, a lot of learning, but a lot of ways that I can apply the things that I have picked up through the years here at this company.
What do you feel like is kind of your biggest obstacle, at least with API Group, whenever it comes to this kind of
The-
stuff, this kind of work?
I think the first biggest obstacle that I encountered when I got here was just the lack of a common language
Mhm.
around diversity and inclusion. And so my the first thing that I talked to Russ about was we can't even have a conversation yet because we are so far apart on the language. Let's find a place where we can really come together so that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we are all understanding what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And so we leverage the building great leaders, the enduring purpose of building great leaders, and an assessment that I am very, very familiar with, the intercultural development inventory, just to raise the awareness and bring that common language, starting with the company presidents and the corporate leadership, and then rolling it out to other groups inside API Group and its family of companies. And about, I don't know, 6, 8 months ago, we also created, with the help of the curriculum designers in the talent development group, we created actually an e-learning course
Mm.
that goes a bit farther in helping people develop that common language and have access to that intercultural development inventory assessment. So anybody who wants to have access to intercultural development or cultural fluency learning can take that e-learning course. And we've been very intentional over the last 15 months to curate a lot of different learning opportunities to put it into the online learning management system that folks can access if they need to. So it's been quite the thrill ride, bringing that common language to the company, but also working to develop a real diversity and inclusion strategy that can serve as the guide for not just us here at corporate, but also for the rest of the companies in the family of companies. So we've had created a diversity and inclusion community whose members are from companies across the enterprise. There is no rank in this group. I was just thrilled that people were applying to be members of the diversity and inclusion community. And what was so gratifying about it is we started back in probably, I want to say July, during the active recruiting for it, July of last year. And it was gratifying to me to see that the people who were applying for this group, there were leaders and line employees who were coming from very diverse backgrounds from a multitude of companies across the enterprise. I didn't really have to recruit anybody.
It just kind
So
of organically happens.
yes, and they come to the work with a passion, not necessarily being steeped in the work as a skill or just a lot of knowledge about it, but a lot of passion. And I think, you can, if you can teach, skill, and you can help people grow their knowledge, but you can't bring the passion to work like this. And so folks are showing up with that passion, and we can help them with the rest.
Here we go. What does that group dynamic kind of look like? I know that you guys have some meetings for all of this. I'm just kind of curious what that dynamic looks like.
We're very new, kind of learning each other, learning our committee style or community styles. Andrea Swartzendruber, who is on this call with us, has graciously volunteered to step in as our facilitator or chair or club president, whatever you want to call it, for the foreseeable future. So I'm thrilled about that because she brings some skill and ability that we really need on that group, and it's very new. I think um, we've had 3 meetings. We're having our 3rd official community meeting in March. So it really is just getting off the ground. But again, a lot of passion, multidiscipline group. We're also going to be joined by some company presidents here, probably in May or June timeframe, when we have had a chance to get the rest of the community up to speed on that happening. But it's been good so far, and our agendas have been pretty tight as we get to know each other. So these are 2-hour meetings every other month or so, and we fill the time. I mean, there is no idle time
Oh,
at
I'm
the
sure.
meetings, and so it's an opportunity for us to get to know each other, tell our stories, grow the community over time, kind of organically. It's an opportunity to educate ourselves a little bit more and grow our own cultural fluency, but it's also an opportunity for us to take up a topic that is important to diversity and inclusion inside this enterprise in all of our companies. And so that's been the agenda, and that will be kind of what we'll do going forward.
Gotcha. So then could you, you gave us a little taste there at the end. What's kind of the end goal in your eyes to come out from this group?
The group is, I just think they're ambassadors. They're
Mhm.
diversity and inclusion ambassadors,
Gotcha.
because I very much like the fact that they are from different companies across the enterprise. They are championing DE&I inside the enterprise, taking what they learn and that passion back into their own companies, and hopefully building a network and a cadre of champions back in the locations where they're coming from. So that really is kind of the goal. It's like when you drop a stone in a pond and you see those ripples start to fan out. We haven't directed anybody to any of this work. That as close as we came to directing people to do anything, it was having all of the company presidents take the intercultural development inventory assessment so we could have a starting place for this work. But to this date, no one has been compelled, or nothing's been mandatory around this work. And it's all been happening pretty organically. And it's really encouraging for me to see that with the work that we've done so far, that company presidents are leaning into the work, that company leadership teams, the company executive teams outside of the corporate offices, are starting to see the benefit of being on their cultural learning journey together. There are starting to be conversations out in these companies because people now have a language with which to talk about this. So there are conversations happening in the companies that weren't happening, 15 months ago. And so I'm just thrilled that that is happening. But now we need to just kind of ramp up the pace a little bit. And so 2022 is going to be that time when we will kind of put our foot on the accelerator on this and start to do some different things.
Excellent. Okay, that's awesome. So let's I'm going to segue just a little bit and kind of start talking about Black History Month itself. So just from a personal standpoint, I would love to hear, what Black History Month means to you specifically before we dive into the specifics of API Group, Western States, etc.
So here's the thing about me in Black History Month. I'm one of those people that says every month is Black History Month.
Okay.
That's what I think. No,
ma'am.
because Black history is American history.
Correct.
And the more we can tell the fuller story of American history, I think the better off we'll all be. And the more we can, not have to manufacture an inclusive environment, it will just be created when we start to do that. So that's me from a personal perspective. But I think about Black History Month every month when February comes around. I think about poor Carter G. Woodson, the first guy to talk about Negro History Week. Can you imagine the pushback he got outside of his own community? I mean, think about the conversations we are having today when people talk about anything related to a particular diversity dimension. I don't care if it's gender, if it's national origin, if it's because that's what immigration is. That's a national origin conversation. When we talk about women's rights, that's a gender identity issue. When we talk about LGBTQ, so when Carter G. Woodson, bless his heart, back in 1926, started talking about Black History Month, Negro History Week, I can imagine the pushback he was getting, some from inside his own community, because I suspect that there were people that says, no, Dr. Woodson, Carter, my man, do not do this because you are calling attention to some stuff that we don't really want to call attention to. Let's just keep a low profile. Let's just keep it low key. Let's just keep moving along, doing what we're doing. And props to Dr. Woodson because he said, oh no, we got to do better than this. But I can imagine that poor man outside of his community, inside of his community. I just, props to anybody that leaned into recognizing this. But anyway, so Black History Week, for me, it's a very personal thing. Matter of fact, I was on a call talking with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about the language of inclusion and, what somebody was, really twisted up about what to call somebody. And I said, first of all, when you start to have those kinds of conversation, it feels to me like people want to be on an inclusion journey. And there's some educating there that needs to happen. So why don't we think about that? But then I started to think about, for me, I go back to that old James Brown song from the 60s. It says, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. That's me. That's me.
I love that.
That is me. Because my Black is beautiful.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I believe Malcolm X was the first one to coin the term unapologetically Black.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. So then, that's what Black History Month means to you. But what does it mean, for API Group, Western States, as a company? How does that affect our culture, and what positives can be drawn from it?
I think Black History Month is an opportunity for people inside this company, people that we're doing business with, to be seen. I think there's no better way to provide that sense of belonging and the permission for Black people to bring their whole selves to work is that in the month of February, you're allowed to be visible, but you're allowed to be celebrated. And I think that's really important. It's also an opportunity for folks who aren't Black to really educate themselves about the Black culture. It is so important for people not to be afraid, not to be reluctant, not to be reticent to engage people because they perceive them to be different from them or different from their own culture. And these months that we celebrate, Black History Month is the first one in the year that we typically celebrate, is an opportunity for us to learn about each other and learn a fuller history of this country. And so I always include, at the top of my list for any of these months, especially Black History Month, is about education. Educate yourself. And it doesn't take a whole lot of going to, the library or getting doing a doctoral dissertation on it. There is probably a story. If you walk outside an API building, wherever it's located, there is probably a story relevant to Black history in that zip code. And last year, I spent a lot of time doing a little bit of search about where our companies are located and that story of Black history around those companies. So, there are things, if you are in South Dakota, if you are in Portland, Oregon, if you are in Duluth, Minnesota, if you are in Buffalo, New York, there was probably a terror lynching of a Black person in that zip code. There was probably a town that was bulldozed. There was probably an affluent Black community that was burned down. There was probably a freeway system built through a neighborhood that might have destroyed a Black community. Every zip code. There were sundown towns. There are places in this country where Black people couldn't be in those towns after the sunset. And there were some places in this country where some of our companies are located where people could only live there. Black people could only live there 6 months at a time. If you were there longer than 6 months, you had to move yourself out of that region for a prescribed period of time before you could come back. Wow. In Oregon, they're just within the last, 2022, just within the last 10 years or so, Oregon has just removed some language from its own constitution that was brought into the Constitution when Oregon was a territory that still had the sundown town language in it. So there is a story about Black history, no matter where you sit in any API company, no matter where that company is located.
And I think it's interesting.
Should know about that. People should know about that.
For sure. And it's interesting that you brought up the sundown town thing. You being from Texas, you probably know where this is, Vidor, Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. And, while it's not, by language, not considered a sundown town, it's still a sundown town even today. And
I just read something about that about 5-6 years ago. There are still places in this, there are still places in this country where if you're in the know, you can call an 800 number and get recruited into the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh my gosh.
So there's still stuff here happening all around us. So people need to know that, but people also need to know the contributions that have been made to this culture by Black people. And not a lot of people know about the advancements in medicine. They don't know about the advancements in technology or the social systems. I was just watching the show last night on Henrietta Lacks's family.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And the contributions that this Black woman made to the medical technology, the advancements in medicine. Every advancement in medical research that has happened since this woman was alive has been based on the cells from her body.
Yeah.
And so and a lot of people don't know that. I just think that there's too much to know, too much to celebrate, too much to educate ourselves about. And 28 days, 29 in a leap year, is just not long enough to do. This is the ongoing story that we need to continue to learn about.
Yeah, there's definitely so much out there. Like I know the first open heart surgery was performed by a Black man um, back
Do
in
you
the
know? Go
1890s.
ahead. Do
Oh
you
no,
know?
that was it. That was the thing.
Do you know who was performing pediatric heart surgeries back in the 1990s? Black doctor is Ben Carson, who was one of the secretaries of housing
Mhm.
in well, we don't need to go we don't need to go into all that, but there's stuff that people need to know.
Yeah. There's
Anyway,
just
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I'm
there's
getting
just so
excited.
much there's just so much like richness that I feel like, a lot of Black people or a lot of people whenever they view Black History Month, it's always just, MLK, Rosa Parks, and that's kind of where they draw that line is like, okay, these are, we're gonna learn about this and to your point, there's just so much stuff out there,
Mhm.
and so many like, in medicine, in theater, in music, in, fill in the blank, there's just so much that Black people have contributed to. But I feel like, at least for me growing up, whenever we would have Black History Month, they focus solely on MLK, Rosa Parks. We might maybe get to talk about Frederick Douglass for a class period, and that was it.
Well, I think that that sanitized view of Black people is really does harm to the
Mhm.
conversation. And if people, I tell people, and I don't want to alarm anybody that might be watching this on YouTube or listening to it wherever they are. But do you know there's so many people that just berate the Black Lives Matter movement
Mhm.
for whatever reason.
Mhm.
But do you know that Martin Luther King Jr. was Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter? So
Right?
people don't know that. So they don't know that part about MLK.
Mhm.
Because you take, who is this 25, 26-year-old man out there leading protests, peaceful protests. What is the average age of a Black Lives Matter protester?
Mhm.
And so yeah, he was there's a book out there called The Radical King
Mhm.
that people need to a fuller story of MLK.
Yeah, I am currently reading The Sword and the Shield, which does the comparison of MLK to Malcolm X.
Yeah,
And they talk about MLK was a lot more radical than we give him credit for, because
yes,
that doesn't fit the story that that the government wants us to be taught, kind of
that's
thing.
right. That's right. That's right. And MLK was about to get wild there towards the end of his life, but
Mhm.
yeah, he was about to start leaning in to this stuff. Anyway, um, but yeah, I think there's history, celebration, education that we need to engage in during the month of February. That just helps tell a fuller story and helps our people inside these companies build their intercultural competence
Mhm.
or their cultural fluency.
100%.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. Is there anything that, API Group is doing at the moment to, embrace Black History Month other than just having, these conversations? Is there any initiatives that you guys got going on?
So there's one of me in my department right now.
Right.
So, just so you know. So I'm really relying on people out in the companies doing things this Black History Month. Last Black History Month we just had a lot of fun because we had our first conversation in this enterprise. We had our first conversation about race. We had no, I think we had some speakers and we had maybe a panel and we had some social media posts just about every day. And I was writing blogs. And so it was really this company's, I think, first sort of enterprise introduction to Black History Month being done that way.
Mhm.
Um, this year, we did a little bit less from Black History Month from the corporate level and put the challenge out to the companies to do more with Black History Month. And so I proposed to company presidents a laundry list of things that they could do in their companies as a business, but also as individuals, starting with looking at their own hiring practices, looking at how they're spending their company's dollars. Are they spending anything with Black-owned businesses?
Mhm.
Are they using their charitable giving dollars to support Black-led nonprofits and Black-led organizations? So I'm interested to see. I know some people are taking me up on that offer, but I'm interested to see after we do some little bit of polling after the month to see who actually did some of those things. I know there are conversations taking place in some companies around the enterprise. I know that people are using the arts and music to do some things around Black History Month. I know that because sometimes they recommend the stuff that they're doing, they recommend it to me. It's like, man, I could be doing something different every night from going to plays and music and watching specials on Netflix and things. But there's one special that I watched. I think I have like maybe 2 episodes left of it. It's called the Fight for America.
Mhm.
It's about the 14th Amendment. It's on Netflix. So if you think about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, 13th Amendment's was the uh, amendment passed right after the Emancipation Proclamation. 14th Amendment is about taking away the 3/5 person and making Black
Right.
people whole people. And then and the 15th Amendment is about the vote. Well, anyway, the 14th Amendment, there's like a 6-part series that's being narrated by Will Smith. And
I love it.
it is so it's wonderful.
Mhm.
It is no there are no actors and celebrities that are taking part in it and narrating this historical look back at how the complexity and the drama to really recognizing people as whole people and not a portion of a person is fascinating. So I think Rashid from Tessiers recommended that. And so I went home that very night, said, well, let me see what this is about. And it's outstanding. And of
What'd you
course,
say it was called again? One more
it's
time.
called The Fight for America.
Fight for America.
The
Got it.
Fight for America.
I'll
And
check it out.
it's on Netflix.
Yep.
Then there is right here locally, the woman whose office is right next to mine recommended a play, a play that's being put on by a local theater called Redwood, and it is about this couple's journey into their lineage when they take one of these DNA tests. And so that's been so there's just all kinds of things that people can take advantage of. So the list that I gave to people that went something like this: review your hiring practices, analyze your vendor contracts and how many small and diverse suppliers are included in that spending, increase your donations to Black-led or Black-focused organization, have that conversation about race that you may not have had in 2021, because I guarantee you there are people inside your organization, not just your Black employees, but other employees who want to have a conversation about race in a safe space. I suggest that they learn the history of their Black neighborhoods in the geography where they're located. And I asked them to find a children's book, if they had children, to find a children's book and read to their children about Black history, because I would suspect that their children probably have questions about it, and mom and dad need to know how to have conversations with their children about it.
Right.
I suggested that if they hadn't already done so, that they should take their intercultural development inventory and start working on their cultural fluency.
Mhm.
I'm here to help with that. That's a commercial. Um, Take that e-learning course on inclusion begins with I. Um, I have had some conversations, gotten some emails from people who want to challenge me on what critical race theory is. I tell them, don't come to me, go educate yourself about it, learn about it from the academics that coined the phrase. And so we've put some information in our learning management system if people are interested in learning about it. Um, yeah,
That's
and there are historical sites across this country, not just, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was in the movie Selma, is a great site to visit. But again, Buffalo, Denver, Portland, Duluth, Texas, other places in Birmingham. Oh my goodness, there's places that watch parties, watch one of these documentaries, or just a movie that where the subject matter is about the issues of race and culture, and have a discussion group about that.
Mhm.
And then and go to the library, read a book. There's so much that can be done this month, and I just encourage people to take the time to do that.
That is awesome. Yeah, you went ahead and ended up actually answering my last question, which was, what are some ways individuals can honor Black History Month? And I think that you just gave us just a book worth of stuff that we can do, So
Absolutely.
that's, I loved that everything about that. Now, just had a major brain fart. I'm so sorry.
You're gonna edit that out of the video.
No, we'll be candid. We'll let it happen. It's not a big deal.
Keep it real.
Yeah, I make mistakes. It happens. I was going to ask you about the critical race theory stuff. So I know that you had mentioned that you had put some stuff out there. I believe it's the management portal. If I'm
It's in
remembering that.
Saba. It's in the learning in the learning
Saba?
management
Yeah,
system.
LMS, Saba.
Yeah, Saba.
Perfect.
Yep.
Mhm.
Just because I think that that's something that people could definitely take a look at, because I do think that that's one of those things that is very misconstrued at the moment, and something that is supposed to be a very positive educational tool has been weaponized.
Mhm.
And so I love the fact that you brought it up. So it's in Saba. Where can people find it exactly in Saba?
It's under the diversity and inclusion tab,
Okay.
and I can't tell you exactly which section of the diversity and inclusion tab it's in, but it's in there.
Excellent.
It's in there.
Well, I won't hold you up for too much longer, but I will, I might give you a couple of small little rapid fire questions just for fun. First and foremost, I am curious, did you watch the Super Bowl halftime performance?
Are you kidding me? Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige,
He was in
Eminem,
the swimwear.
Dr. Dre,
Dr. Dre.
Kendrick Lamar. Did I watch the Super Bowl halftime show? I was the Super Bowl halftime show at my house.
I love it. I love it. No,
My kids were over. They're 30 and 35, or maybe 31, 36. I lose track. They were over, and they were looking at me like I had lost my mind. And my husband and I were like, "Oh, are you kidding me? This is the best halftime. Well, second best halftime show, because Prince."
who's okay? I was about to ask Michael.
Prince is number one.
Prince, yeah.
Forever and always.
Prince was unfair though, just because literally Mother Nature said we're gonna make this the coolest performance you've ever seen.
You know what? It had to happen. It was good. It was good.
That's awesome. So, okay, so we've got that one. Favorite. Who's your favorite Black author? Do you have one?
Oh my gosh. Oh goodness gracious. Who am I reading right now? My favorite Black author is whoever I'm reading at the moment. And right now I am reading Cast, rereading The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson,
Okay.
and Cast. So, and I like it too because Isabel and I are like of the same age. And it's just very cool to me to be reading this very well researched kind of news research and novel all together. It's so well done. If people have, well, several weeks, because it's pretty weighty, but it's excellent. It's The Warmth of Other Suns, and the sequel to what the book, it's not really a sequel, it's just another very well researched book. It's called Cast, Caste, and the author is Isabel Wilkerson.
Isabel Wilkerson.
Yeah.
And we're recording this, so in case I forget, I can go back and find
Yes,
it
you
again.
can. And The Warmth of Other Suns, the first book, it really is about the Black migration from the South, starting in about the 1940s all the way through the mid 70s. And it talks about why that was happening and where people who were living in southern states as sharecroppers and laborers and just under, this weight of Jim Crow, just didn't want to stay down south anymore. So it talks about all those families who were in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and how they migrated to places as far away as California, Chicago, New York, Detroit. So it talks about that migration. It's excellent.
Excellent. Okay, well, I won't hold you up any longer. I know that you are probably the busiest woman on the face of the planet. But I appreciate you so much for giving us your time. Yes.
Can I ask just one kind of pointed question for you?
Yes.
When we think about kind of Western states, I think we've talked a lot about kind of API group, kind of general side of things. If you were to give Western states employees either some sort of advice or words of encouragement when it comes to DEI, either in their branches or how they can kind of raise that conversation, what would you suggest?
Well, I'm going to suggest a couple different things. I think the first is that there's nothing that is, in my mind, better to have in an intercultural competence journey or a cultural fluence journey than self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Andrea, you know about the intercultural development inventory, and it can give you those insights into how well developed your intercultural competence or your cultural fluency is, because people who think they are one way could be inadvertently causing harm in the spaces that they're occupying. And so I think it's important to know if you're a leader or someone who aspires to be a leader, that you have that self-awareness. So work on yourselves first. That's what I would tell people, to work on yourselves. And then from a broader perspective, I would say, if your leadership, how purposeful is your leadership in creating inclusive workspaces and workplaces? That you don't need an assessment to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Look around you. If you are questioning who's getting the jobs, who's getting the promotions, who's getting the access, who's getting, the leg up to things, that's something to question. And I would say, I'm a peaceful protester. I say question respectfully. I don't want to get anybody in trouble for going and kind of making demands for things.
Yeah.
But I would say, how purposeful is your leadership in developing their cultural fluency, and how much time and energy and real purpose is being put behind hiring and developing, the people that are coming into to your workplaces. And that's just a variety of diversity, not just race and gender identity, but LGBTQ, national origin, age, life experience. How much energy is being put behind creating that experience for people. I would also say to people, as you're developing your own self-awareness, ask the question to yourself: do you see yourself as a disruptor of the systems that are creating the exclusion that we want to sort of move away from? Are you a disruptor? And if you cannot say that you're a disruptor of discrimination, microaggressions, acts of exclusion, any of those things, and you don't feel you're prepared to be a disruptor, that's educating yourself. And so start with yourself,
Wow.
because you can't really teach something you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
start with yourself.
Yeah. I know in so many situations, it's you kind of mentioned it earlier, but that people are wanting to have those conversations, and it's hard to prompt that, especially when you aren't in a formal leadership position. So I think that, that advice of just kind of focusing on yourself, and hopefully it'll start making those little, as you mentioned, kind of the drop in the pond. Hopefully it'll start making those waves bit by bit, and you start having more of that confidence to then be that disruptor. But
every leader in this company should know where they are on their cultural fluence journey. Every leader, that should not be a voluntary opt-in thing. Every leader should know that, because leaders have the ability to affect, influence too many people's careers.
Mhm.
And so leaders should absolutely know where they are on this cultural fluency continuum that we've talked about, because it's too easy to cause harm to someone's career if they're not.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Any other final words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to add in?
no, but thank you. This has been fun. You know, I was sitting with my head down, working on doing some writing and some reading, and it's always refreshing to meet people, welcome Jordan, and have a conversation like this. So I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. And again, we greatly appreciate the fact that you have been an open book with us, and you've taken the time to, you know, uh, educate others. So that's very powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
All
Have a
right.
great afternoon.
You as well.
Yeah,
You
you
take
as
care.
well.
See you soon.
Thank you, Bella.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.